What's going on, everybody? Grant Millard here, and boy, it has been a whirlwind last couple of, 2 months, really. I mean, my wife and I have been quarantined for the last 2 months, if you haven't been able to tell by my my lack of a haircut in that time frame, as well as my lack of habit of being dressed in a more business casual manner. I'm just going full casual. So shout out to Office fans. I'm wearing the Scranton picnic day t-shirt that my siblings got me for Christmas. But at any rate, I still wanted to jump on here, even though it's been a while. I thought I would be able to keep up with my content with the whole COVID-19 thing, but that didn't happen. Although a lot did happen. I became a father. My little girl, my wife Aubrey, and I had a little girl on April 8th, 2020, one of the quarantine babies, and we are over the moon with parenthood, so I'm sure I will share updates with you on that. But what I wanted to do today is just hop on here, and especially given the fact that a lot of businesses are going to be opening up over the next month. I think this Friday, today's Monday, so I think Friday, when restaurants are going to be able to start letting people back into their restaurants, and then that's going to be followed by stuff like campgrounds and, entertainment venues, at least in Ohio. So I know I'm excited to share with you some of the tips that I've gathered from several resources on what you can do to make sure that you're hitting that hard. And so let's start optimizing. Alrighty, so first and foremost, I know this whole time frame has been absolutely crazy, but I will be pretty straightforward. Even though it has been some uncertain times for myself and my family, and my job and the company we work for, I gotta say the amount of lessons and the amount of positivity that I have come away with and have experienced from other people in this time frame has been one of the more amazing time frames and experiences I've ever been through. So in an optimistic sense, I'm actually really thankful for the COVID-19 crisis because it has forced me and a lot of people around me to think differently about how we go about business. It has forced us to look at what our weaknesses are and made us improve. And I think it's given us just enough pressure to demonstrate where we really need to get better as a community, as a person, as a business, and not allowed us to hide behind the busyness of our everyday lives. Quarantine has a way of doing that for you. And I honestly think that those who have approached it that way are going to come out of this much, much stronger than they ever have before. One of my favorite conversations actually during this whole process was actually with an attorney. And he kind of likened this to the storm that Forrest Gump and Lieutenant Dan go through, and they come out on the other side as the only shrimping boat left. And because they survived, they caught almost all the shrimp, more than anybody else, and grew that into a huge empire because their competition just wasn't able to weather the storm. And I think a lot of us here who had the mentality of let's get through this, let's not just sit and say woe is me, this is a terrible time, but let's learn how to adapt, respond, and then prepare to get through it, are all going to emerge as better people. And ultimately that is going to pay off for us both personally, professionally, and of course financially. So that being said, here are a couple tips and suggestions on what you all should do in preparation for COVID-19. or at least the reemergence of your business. So number one, utilize social media to no end. That is one thing that people are going to be watching. You want to make sure that your customers are going to know what you are planning on doing when it comes to reopening your business. So, of course, I'm sure many of you are already doing this, but number one, I always suggest create a video explaining what people should expect for a lot of reasons. Number one, videos always are going to get more play on social media. And number two, it allows them to hear directly from you instead of having to read a post. And just people are much more likely to engage with that. So that's the first thing I'd suggest. Number two, make sure if you are opening with, like, in stages, that you make sure that your hours are updated everywhere, not just on the front of your door, which I've actually seen people do. They'll update their store hours with a piece of paper on their door, but they won't actually update it on Google or Facebook or any of the other areas where people are expecting to find their hours. Google's obviously the big one. People are going to be checking for that. And Google, just so you know, has actually created areas specifically for COVID-19. So if you're a restaurant, for example, you can post whether you are allowing dine-in at this point, whether you're allowing carry-out or takeout or delivery. So make sure those are updated, because that's also a huge deal. And make sure that you're communicating, again, how people are supposed to do business with you. As a personal experience, I did a Google search for an electronics store because I wanted to buy a new pair of headphones, and so we got on Google, and they didn't have any sort of updated anything, so we were curious as to whether they were open or not, but we went anyway because we were in town, and it turned out that they only did curbside pickup. So I couldn't go in and actually look for the headphones that I wanted. And so so I pulled up and asked them if they had it, and they went out. Turns out they didn't. So that was unfortunate. But the problem was that store didn't communicate effectively with me or with their customers how exactly to do business with you unless you clicked on their website. And the reality is that your Google My Business page is getting much more exposure, and people are much more expectant that your information on your GMB listing is more accurate. So that's one thing. In addition to social media, make sure that your Google My Business page is accurate with how people are supposed to do business with you. Now more than ever, people are relying on your online presence to know this stuff. Number three, this is a little more practical. If you haven't been in your business in a while, get in and do a deep clean. People are going to feel much more at ease if they walk in wearing a mask or not, and it just feels cleaner than normal. That's a big deal, especially for businesses that they're not expecting necessarily to be super clean. And the businesses like that are like auto shops or like body shops, oil change places, the places where you're going and you kind of already somewhat expect it to be a little bit dirty just because that's the nature of the business. Make sure you get in, you do a good deep clean of everything, and stores especially, retail, restaurants is even more of a big deal. So that way when people are in there, they just feel a little bit more at ease, because that's the one thing you have to consider is that we, as a society, whether we like it or not, are much more aware. Our brains have become much more attuned to recognizing when specifically there are things that aren't clean. And that's just a big deal. So going out of your way to communicate with your customers that you are taking every precaution to make sure your facility is clean is going to become a point of differentiation if not all businesses take it as seriously as others. Thirdly, this is one of my favorites, and that's don't stop offering the services that you were offering or as a byproduct of COVID-19. So if you change the way you did business because you couldn't see people in person anymore, don't stop those. So if you're a business that had to resort to doing Zoom meetings with your clients, well then don't stop that, because now you've taken a barrier out of the way, which is travel or just timing. I mean, it's a lot easier to jump into a Zoom call because there's no drive time in between. So there's timing and travel restrictions. I mean, Zoom has become an option that people are now used to. So don't just go back to normal. Learn from these things. If you were a personal trainer or a gym that started giving electronic workouts, that's an amazing marketing strategy in and of itself. And people are much more likely to utilize your services if they already have an idea of what they're going to get before they even get it. So as a result, that's something I would never stop. I would continue to do that as well. And so if you're a print or a print screen printing company, you're making masks now, keep making them. I mean, masks have become a staple in our society as of late, but they've been a staple for a long time in a lot of countries east of us. And so who's to say that the mask may become something that we just never take off? I mean, with this, it's not necessarily a bad idea. So always have that as an option, and you obviously pay attention to the trends and the orders. But that's something that may not necessarily be circumstantial. So all in all, I think that these are some of the things that you should think about. And if you have any other tips, I'd love to hear, what you all are doing in preparation to reopen. I know I'm excited for at least the economy to start to go back up and go back to normal. And as always, feel free to reach out to me directly if you want a personal recommendation based on what you're doing right now. And thanks again. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll talk to you later. Take care.